Hey there, Internet. My name's Luxander. Today we're going to be talking about Black Lives Matter and what's been happening over the past couple of weeks. As usual, I'm a little bit late to these conversations as far as my YouTube channel goes. Right now, our country, and really all over the world, there are protests happening about police brutality. I think that most people who are aware of me are already aware that this has been an ongoing problem for a long time. The entire history of our country. Black people have been murdered, persecuted, hurt, traumatized in ways that are frankly unacceptable, that have been unacceptable, and that we have overall been far too inactive about. This particular mixture, this particular event happening right now, I believe is partially only possible because of we just have a very specific mixture of circumstances right now that have caused this particular movement to be bigger than any I can remember in my lifetime. Occupy Wall Street was a thing that was happening while I was in high school, and while that was significant, it was not nearly so dominant in the discourse. Twitter didn't really exist back then, so it's also just a fundamentally different kind of protest that we're having right now. The economy has been gradually getting worse. Our political situation has been gradually sliding towards fascism. Now there are millions and millions of Americans out of work because of the pandemic. So a whole lot of people have a lot more free time than they would normally, which I believe is part of why these protests are so large, so continuous. In a way, it's kind of extremely fortunate that we had this pandemic free us from that situation where it is just impossible to get out of work to go to protests. I personally have not gone to any protests because I don't know that I would be very useful there. I've been trying to donate money and raise awareness. This is kind of me telling you that you can help without being on the ground, although it is very important to be on the ground. Like, if you're able-bodied, fairly mentally stable person, and you're white, it's important to go and physically be there. I'm struggling a lot with what to say here, how to proceed. We need to mobilize on as many fronts as possible, which does mean there are some people who can't go to protests, and they are needed elsewhere. Here basically are some of the ideas that I've seen with just different approaches that you could do more than one that would generally help the situation. Bail funds are largely funded. Always double check if you have a local bail fund, especially if you have a smaller town that has not received as much attention. Like Minneapolis bail fund was super funded by the time I tried to donate to it. So I donated to a smaller one closer to where I live that hadn't gotten nearly so much attention. Also donate to organizations that are working to provide alternatives to policing in communities, organizations which are putting pressure on their politicians to defund the police, reallocate those resources, change the rules for the police during the time that we still have to operate with them. Continue to have difficult conversations with the white people you know in your life. It's awkward to be the one person at your family dinner who's talking about politics. You may feel like you are causing problems or that you're going to cause problems for yourself, and clearly, if you are vulnerable, like if you are a queer person in a homophobic family, don't put yourself at risk. But generally speaking, white people in white families need to be having these difficult conversations. Challenge racism in your family. If people around you are talking about the looting and property damage, you need to challenge them. Ask them why they're focusing on that and not the indiscriminate murder of black people in the street in the goddamn day. Share resources with each other. Provide resources for each other. And by that I mean, if you have friends who are going to a protest, make sure that you have information on where they're going to be. Have them memorize your phone number, like be the contact person, be a safe place for them to go when they are done with the protest, offer to pick them up from the protest, or offer to be the person who's going to be their contact if they are arrested. Community support and resources are a thing that you can absolutely engage with and is very important. If you can get a hold of PPE, personal protective equipment for people you know who are going to be on the ground, like safety glasses, like masks, like padding for their rib cages, you know what I'm saying? Resources. Find out what are the cheapest and highest rated safety goggles that you could distribute. Don't stop talking about it. Whatever you do. I'm pivoting a little bit to more of like about me and my process. I am sorry. This is how I function. I have been very aware of racial disparities in our country for a while. Ferguson's situation was probably what really awakened me to it at the time. Although I was already sympathetic. I grew up in an area, like, I was like a poor white person around predominantly Black, Mexican, and Asian people. Like, I grew up in an area that was predominantly minorities. I have already within me a understanding of the humanity of Black people. I was not insulated from them as a child. When I went to school, I had to walk through metal detector and let my bag be scanned every day because we were considered inherently dangerous. And not really me so much, but like we as students, predominantly because there were so many Black students there, we were all considered suspect. Miss me with your metal detectors in your white schools argument. Even so, with growing up around Black people, having Black friends, going to their homes and meeting their families, I still, only in my adulthood, came to truly understand how deeply widespread and fundamentally flawed this whole situation and whole system is. And after this event in particular, I don't know that I can go back to any kind of whatever normal was before this. I don't know if I'm ever going to be able to, like, I'm sure that I will, publicly engage in frivolity. It feels desperately wrong at this point. And I swear to fucking God, if we don't stop talking about J.K. Rowling, I'm gonna lose it. I can't believe that we are allowing that distraction to even exist right now. Yes, trans people are discriminated against. Yes, it sucks. We as a class, though, are not being murdered in the street by officers of the law. Black trans people are at serious risk. Tony McDade, say his name. But trans people on their own as a category, including all of the white people who are trans, I don't think that it's even comparable. I don't think it's even comparable. Like, I as a white trans person have been concerned during the Trump administration about them legislating away our civil rights, as an example. Like, not having legal protection from getting fired for being trans. Whereas Black people are getting murdered. My Twitter, at the very least, has been mostly given over to retweeting information about what's going on and retweeting interesting takes. I probably don't follow nearly as many Black people as I should on Twitter. It's a process that I'm working on. I have, in the past, what I have done is follow people as they come up in my feed so that can be part of the sort of background of my life, which is another part of why I find it very easy to sympathize, and also I have been aware of a lot of these events that perhaps didn't make it to the mainstream news. Breonna Taylor is a name that I wouldn't know if it wasn't for Twitter and all of the activists there. So it's also really important to educate yourself, to be able to consume the works of Black people, of people of color in general, and absorb that information without commenting on it, without inserting your view into the situation. Just listen, there is no normal to return to. Normal is a state of fear for almost everyone who lives in this country. The only people who are not actively in crisis right now, I believe, are racists. I think anybody who's not actively a racist right now is having a pretty shitty time. And frankly, as white people who want to consider ourselves allies, we should feel like shit right now. Because we, as a group, have collectively not done enough. And we have to forge something new. Defunding the police doesn't mean hiring private security to do the same kind of brutal fucking job. It means reallocating their wildly overinflated budgets to community services that will actually help people. This is possible. We can do this. It's been done. Crime goes down in the absence of violent police officers. I don't know how things are going to go moving forward. For me personally, or for our country, or for our communities. How can I talk to you about minoxidil and my facial hair growth right now? How can I talk to you about that? How can I talk to you about the fact that I'm going to move, or the kittens that my sister has right now? Like, how can anybody talk about anything right now that isn't that Black Lives Matter? How is there any conversation happening that's not that? Stop it. Focus on what matters. Don't let this moment pass. Please, don't stop talking about this. Don't let us slide back into whatever kind of comfortable situation we were experiencing before. Like, comfortable for white people who don't have to think about it that much. Don't let that happen. That is absolutely the worst thing we could allow at this point, because this could be pivotal. This could be pivotal to the future of so many Black people who right now can't succeed because they live in a system that is actively keeping them from thriving. I'm going to continue to think about how I want to proceed moving forward with my activism generally, with my channel, and I want you to do the same thing. I want you to think, how can I fundamentally change what I do, what I talk about, who I talk to make this situation right? We need to make things right. No justice, no peace. Stay safe out there. Be well. Black Lives Matter. Hello. I don't feel super comfy putting ads on this video, but I will thank my patrons because they're very patient, and this is technically what they're paying me to do with my time. So a special shout out to Tina M, R. Halverson, Sarah A, Suzanne Maynard, Wellington Marcus, Amanda B, Athiet, Elizabeth Bartell, Frozen Summers, Rose Above It Showing Up, and Mr. Atheist.